I appreciate you guys sending the fines over. So I actually I'm a little bit behind the eight ball this week, but I was able to quickly see what we had here, and I really I like what you got here. I like the theme here of some forbidden fruit, um, and at the same time, kind of showing a range of value, if you will. And
Hmm.
anyone do you want to kick off with one in particular, or should we just make it random? What
Um,
are your thoughts?
Whatever you want, dealer's choice.
All right, well, let me go ahead and share my screen here. John, can you throw on screen sharing, or do you want to
Yeah,
share them?
I can share it with you, Jeff. I can give you the screen share ability since you kind of moderate these things.
Let me try to stay in front of this light here so that
Hey
we're in
man,
a
you're making it work. That's really all that matters.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, if you move your head like that, it's great.
Yeah, if I just stay right here, yeah,
There we go.
we're in a
Oh,
a con. Oh yeah, I
you
can't
need like a
move.
big hat. You need
I
like a, you
I,
need
I
like a,
some Mexican sombrero or something like
you
that.
need like
Yeah,
Norm Macdonald playing Burt
Jeopardy.
Reynolds in Celebrity Jeopardy. Yeah, funny. Hat.
uh, all right. So let's start off with the Honda Beat. This is uh a 91. Not that it matters. They were all pretty similar in terms of their specifications. But this is one of those cars that I really am, and I'd feel badly if you bought one 5 years ago when they were truly, just fresh off the boat, brand new, exotic. I think people were paying 15 and 20,000 for these things, and now they're selling for what they should be, which is, I think this is a fair number, 10 grand. Um, I think this is a great deal right now if you're around this kind of money for one in decent shape, because you really can't beat this for just a button down, bare bones, feel like you're 2 inches off the road kind of experience. And if you're looking for something different than a Miata, because you feel like either maybe you just don't like Miatas, or you just don't want to be another Miata in the parking lot with, two sentiments, which I understand. I've never been a big fan of the Miata. I mean, I appreciate its virtues, but I didn't ever really enjoy driving one. I
Mm.
think this is an awesome choice for something that scratches that cheap, reliable roadster itch, and is way different than a Miata. I mean, even with this probably being one of the more common JDM cars, I would say it's probably in the top five of the most frequent vehicles that you see imported. You're still not going to, see one of these driving down the road on a Saturday, or it'd be very unlikely if you did. So, I mean, I think for 10 grand, you'd be hard pressed to find something that gives you more smiles per dollar. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I really like this pick. Jeff, this is so what you were kind of saying about those people who initially bought these things when, they were finally allowed to be imported. And because John chose out this theme of cars not allowed into the US, it's kind of consistent with all of them. But like you were saying, when they first, touch down, they're selling for 15 or 20. And now they're starting to level back out at those lower numbers, closer to 10, right, in that neighborhood. So like a 40 to 50% reduction in the price, right? And it all comes back to the fact that the reason we don't have these cars is they never ended up selling here. A lot of people don't know this, but there's actually a predecessor to the Beat, an S600, S660 or something.
Hmm.
A lot of people don't know because they never ended up selling them here because this one didn't do so well, or these smaller types of cars never did so well in the United States. So I feel like this is very much a commodity item, and there's going to be a handful of probably younger enthusiasts who, maybe saw one in a magazine or TV show and always really wanted one. But I feel like the market on them is pretty small. Now, in regards to the vehicle itself, I think it's sick. I think it's so cool. It's so unique. It would probably be so fun to drive this thing and take up a quarter of the lane. 660cc, so it's got a super bike engine in it. It's got a street bike engine in it. Revs to, I think, almost 9,000 RPM, 1,600 pounds. Factory zebra seats. Come on now. Are you kidding me? I think it's a really cool car, and I agree with you, Jeff. 10K. Come
Yeah.
on. So much cooler than a Miata for 10.
Just for the seats alone.
Those seats are OEM. I was like, wow, this is kind of riced out with the zebra seats. And then I look them up. They're most of them are like this, actually, which is crazy to me. But yeah, I think it's pretty cool. But again, commodity item for sure.
Yeah, it is a commodity item for sure, and I picked it because it was different. You know, I went with a theme tonight of not made for the USA, as in cars that we didn't get when they were new, and now we're able to access them. And you know, these K cars are so really interesting, and you guys hit the nail on the head. It's so different. I mean, I went to a car show maybe 2 years ago, and someone had a Nissan Figaro there, you know, and everybody was just kind of like, that was the talk of the car show, you know, not the Corvettes, not the GTOs, like the little K car was the talk of the show. And this is a great, you know, as you mentioned, this is right in its price range. There was a 91 that went for 10K in January on Cars and Bids. There was a 92 with 60K and it sold for 9,700 on Bring a Trailer just a couple of days ago. So, you know, these cars have kind of found their price. You know, this is going to be your 10 grand car. We'll sell it for 10 grand if you decide to sell it in 2 years time. You know, they're so different. They're neat. You know, they're going to hold their value, and they're just so simple. They're simple, basic motoring, and it opens the door to other people that may not afford, you know, some of the other two cars we're going to talk about tonight to get into, you know, funky import type stuff.
Yeah, totally. I like that point a lot. Sorry to cut you off, Jeff, but real quick, I like that point a lot about it is a affordable import unique car if you want to scratch that itch, where you don't have to spend, you know, 80 to 100,000 on a limited BMW, Audi, you know, or even a Nissan Skyline, something like that. So that's a great point.
You know, the thing I've always wondered about these cars, or the JDM cars in general, is, you know, Lars, you mentioned a vehicle that I've always found to be very special, which is the original Honda S600, which many people say, you know, kind of set the stage for what became the Honda S2000, right? That, you know, every couple of decades, Honda builds an absolutely incredible roadster, and it's just, you know, it's an instant collector's item. So what's interesting to me, though, is that, you know, for all the hoopla there was around the JDM cars when they first started really showing up in mass a few years ago, they don't ever really become what I would call collectible, right? You know, even the most desirable Skyline, it's collectible, but it's not. We don't have the same connection with it as it relates to a vehicle that was sold in our culture, and that you know, we saw from the production to the eventual delivery to being able to buy one in the showroom. And I think that's kind of this weird gray area about these cars, is that they, and I think it's a good thing ultimately for us as buyers, like they'll always be reasonable, but you know, there's something about them where you're just kind of like, you know, they don't ever quite come to that place where it's like a car that we just, you know, as that was built for our market, and that we just, you know, coveted from the day it was a sketch in a designer's notebook. There's just some weird block, I think, mental block, if you will, when it comes to these cars, at least for me, where I just don't have kind of that same, like, you know, butterflies in the stomach kind of thing about a car that I've just always wanted, that I, you know, was able to see in the showroom when it was new. So it's just an observation that, you know, I like, you know, the S600, you know, it stayed forbidden fruit, right? It was never brought here. You know, it was never a car that all of a sudden we started seeing like 50 of them showing up on a boat, you know, 20 years later, right? You know, if you find one today, it's as elusive as it was when it was new, you know. Whereas some of these cars that just show up by the boatload, I think they'll always be great values. I just don't think they'll ever be truly collectible.
I think you'll see that change, Jeff, because you know we're getting to these cars. You know, as people may know, the whole kind of rule about the 25-year rule of importing cars and whatnot. We're getting to the Gran Turismo internet age. You know, where you know people who were old enough to play Gran Turismo and go on the internet and see YouTube from Best Motoring and Top Gear, you know, that we didn't get when you and I were kids, Jeff, are now seeing this. And now okay, now this could be their classic, you know, there's going to maybe more love and appreciation for these things.
That's a fair point. A fair point. Yeah, more attainable. So therefore, it kind of becomes more collectible or more sought after just for that reason alone. So, but yeah, valid point for sure. All right. Well, let's jump on to the next one, which is one that I've actually I thought for a long time these were a great deal as far as an imported vehicle. But this one, wow, this was I didn't actually see the price yet. So this is a Mitsubishi Pajero Evolution, which was short wheelbase, 4-wheel drive. It was like a it's like the Evolution we looked at last week, like like a Lancer, but on stilts. And this thing is just so freaking cool. I mean, I um I love it. I mean, look at this 3.5 liter V6 with 276, which 276, that's a number that I don't know if it means anything else to you guys, but that was always kind of like for like in the middle 90s, that was kind of like the big horsepower number. I remember there were any number
that was the Japan rule that Japanese cars I believe couldn't have over 276 horsepower or whatever that translates into kilometer, and to kill him into whatever the other system is. I'm going off the top of my head, but yeah, but a lot of those cars had more than 276, like
the gentleman's agreement. Yeah,
the gentleman's agreement.
yeah
FTIs had more than 276, and Evos had 276, and Skylines probably had 276.
That's all true. I believe that.
So the fact that this thing got like the most amount of power that you were allowed to have in Japan at the time, and then obviously, I mean, the Pajero has just tremendous 4-wheel drive capabilities. So, I mean, it like I love the idea of just driving this thing fast on like a broken up fire road. I mean, that to me would just be one hell of a day. And this one, I actually know who we're talking about in terms of the importer. This guy's always got cool stuff for sale in New Hampshire. He's got a kind of a standing Craigslist ad. And he to his credit, he is bringing in really interesting stuff. Like he's bringing in, as opposed to just bringing a bunch of Honda Beats, he's bringing in like really interesting specification models. So this, to me, again, John, this actually kind of proves your point from the last one, that someone looked at this and said, look at everything I'm getting in terms of the performance on board, the rarity, the fact that anything that is an Evolution spec model in the Mitsubishi lineup has historically been one of the most sought after vehicles they've made. I mean, for under 40 grand, you have like an actual performance vehicle, limited production, and also checking the box of what is, to my mind, one of the most desirable vehicle segments right now, which is the short wheelbase 4-wheel drive, with legitimate off-road capabilities right out of the box. So, I mean, this was probably a great deal for the seller, because I'm sure they imported it for far less than this, but who cares? I mean, if you wanted one and you got to wait another year for one of these to show up, you're gonna jump at this one and go for everything you got. So looks like a great deal. I just want to check the miles, 105,000 miles. So not not completely a time capsule, but still, based on the photos, looks pretty nice for what it is. So I think this is, if you wanted one, I think this is a great deal. But to some people, it might not make sense.
Yeah, this thing, it's so rare, because we always talk about like these homologation specials, which obviously, I mean, we've talked about this in previous episodes, but those cars like the E30 M3, the Audi Quattro Coupe, things along that lines, those always hold a significant value for the collectors, right? And they're always really popular when they come up for auction or come up for sale. You rarely see a 4x4 kind of sporty, literally a sport utility vehicle in the homologation form. So I think that alone holds huge weight with how cool and unique and just different this thing is. I mean, look at this thing. It has the rear mounted tire, the wing, the third rear view mirror mounted on the hood, box flares, and also for the we were just talking about the horsepower, but this thing has I did a little research on this one. It has three-way adjustable suspension, front and rear lockers, high and low gears, obviously, but I mean that's pretty serious performance, and it probably has realistically more like 320 horse. So independent suspension, so you could really hustle this thing along on a broken up, like you said, Jeff. This thing would be fun to just hustle along with confidence. I think it's such a cool vehicle, and again, bucket seats, the flares, it's a homologation spec 4x4. Great buy. And yeah, I'm in on this one for sure. But again, back to what I was saying with the Honda Beat. It's a commodity thing because they didn't sell here. The Pajeros never sold in America. No one wanted them. So it's just kind of funny how we look back and say, well, this thing's sick. At least I do. But, no one wanted them at the time. So I think that's interesting.
It's definitely sick. And it was one of when I was thinking of ideas for Titans, it was one of the things I thought was, we got to talk about this. And, we had the Lancer Evo last week. That was the World Rally car, the Group A car. This is the rally raid vehicle. I've always found these things really neat and fascinating. We talked about trucks a few weeks ago, and we talked kind of overland, the off-road. This is like the performance truck. This is the performance SUV. This is I'm not going to go camping with this vehicle. I'm just going to rip the hell out of a fire road with this truck. And, the seller's great. The seller's actually, I was looking at, has there been any other Evos that have sold recently? And they're all from the same seller in New Hampshire. They had one that was a 97 that went for $48K on Bring a Trailer back in January. That had 76,000 miles. They had a 98 with 80K on it that went for 36 in February, and another 98 that had 63,000 miles on that went on Cars and Bids in February for 49,000. So this is, I think, the steal of the bunch. I think, whoever bought this did a heck of a job. And it's really great seeing these, you could, yeah, exactly. If you're pulling up right now from Hudson, New Hampshire, which is where the importer is from, and they have some really neat stuff. And it's really cool seeing these Evos out there. I think there was one floating around our neck of the woods. I believe one of the guys that used to own Dent Sport Garage had one. Or has one currently. And I love seeing these. These are just really neat vehicles.
Yeah, they really are. That was a good pick.
It just made me happy. I'm like, we got to put this in here.
No, that was a good pick.
Real quick though, anecdotally, you mentioned Dent Sport. Dent Sport is sadly they shut down a few years ago. The founder of that shop was offered a job with Google when they came into Cambridge. And he was a brilliant guy. His name was Alex. But Alex had he had an 88 Dodge Raider with a 2JZ engine swapped, the twin turbocharged supermotor. He swapped under the hood. And I saw this. Oh my
goodness.
I saw this. When in my Subaru days, I had a vehicle that was up to his shop for like I don't know, it was like suspension install or something that needed an alignment down at the Town Fair Tire right there in Norwood, Mass. And he came down, he was just making sure like I was okay, or like the car got down to okay, whatever it was. He was in that thing, and he said, okay, you're all set, great. He turned around, and there was like you could go out on the main drive and like up to an intersection and drive down the road to the shop. He just jumped in this thing, punched it. He went over a curb, got the truck airborne, went through a field, like cut off all the traffic, and then like skirted out like a quarter mile down the road and cut everybody off, went to his shop. He was a character, but that truck was kind of like the poor man's version of this, and it moved out very well. But
I don't know if it's him that has the one around here, but there is a photo of one that's towing I believe a first generation Lancer Evo, and it's just
it could very well be him.
Coolness.
Yeah, Yeah, these guys really do bring in some interesting, really
Yeah.
desirable spec. Like I said, they go for the really interesting stuff. They're not just bringing over the generic, JDM, quick flip things. They're buying interesting specifications. But
Mhm.
yeah, super cool truck. So let's jump over to our last one, which is one of to me. I'll be honest. This is I love these. I absolutely love these. 94 Audi RS2 Avant. You know, I don't to me, I don't think there is an enthusiast car out there that does so much at the same time. I mean, this is first of all, it's a fast wagon. Fast wagons are always going to be the tits as far as I'm concerned. But then, I mean, look at this thing. Like Porsche had a hand, and I think Porsche was involved in the assembly process. But I mean, if you look at this, it's incredible because you look at the front end, you look at that bumper, and all you see is like 993 Carrera. That's all I see. I see that bumper. I'm just like, yeah, that's like it's like an Audi, and it is like an Audi 90 and Porsche 911 993 chassis love child. That's all I see there, which I think is amazing. The cup style wheels, which look like they were lifted right off the 993. Not to mention the fact that this is extremely limited production, 2,900 built, and the turbocharged 5-cylinder is just one of the sickest engines Audi has ever put in their cars. I mean, I have a detuned version of that motor in my S6, and I absolutely love it. But I mean, this thing was just so much cooler, which was pretty hard to do because the S6 was pretty cool itself. But it did not have the Porsche connection, which is really what I mean sets these apart. So I mean, it's just like the Mercedes 500e, which again, collaboration whereby Porsche did some assembly. But what's amazing to me about these, and these have come up a lot later because obviously Doug DeMuro just sold his RS2
Yeah.
on Cars and Bids as soon as he became a multimillionaire. Went out and bought a 911, a Carrera GT. It was like that boom, RS2 is on the block. But what what I think is so interesting about this compared to the 500e is that the RS2 is selling for 100,000 or almost time and again, whereas the 500e is still, I mean, it's sought after, but you can still buy a 500e for 50 grand. So there's to me, this is definitely sort of a market moment where we are acknowledging that this is one of those special cars. I don't think it would matter if we had gotten it here in the States versus the fact that it's a great, gray market, forbidden fruit, whatever you want to call it. I don't think it really would have mattered. I don't think it would have held it back because it's limited production. It's a Porsche partnership, and it's a car they will never build again. And that's just, we've talked about that before, that whole sentiment of a car they will never build again. And this is one of them in a nutshell. And I love it. I would have given them 197,000 if I was in a position to buy one. I absolutely love it.
Wow. Wow. One thing I have to say before I say my statements, I have never, is this episode 12, right?
13.
13 times 30. So it's a lot of minutes. I have never heard Jeff that hyped up and passionate and
Yeah.
just about a vehicle. Jeff, that was probably your best performance right there in terms of just you like this one, huh?
A little.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, I think it's absolutely awesome. It's just like you said, it's so many things in one. And even though it's a 4-door, even though it's a wagon, it's from the 90s, so it's a small footprint of a car. It has all that space, it has all that utility, but it still probably weighs much less than a new M3, which is a very agile car, even by today's standards. It's just the Porsche partnership. Like you said, who knows how much they really did. There's definitely the cues there. Like even from the side angle, you look at the front end, and it's like, what am I looking at? You know what I mean? The rear end, they put the license plate down on the rear of the bumper so they could have the horizontal thing. All
Right.
the 911 four-wheel drive editions, they have the little line. It's so perfect. And you said it, that 5-cylinder motor, you want to talk about unique. I mean, I don't even know how to describe how it sounds. It's so different. It's just that's a great vehicle. And for 97, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a lot. But like you said, market moment. That's what are you gonna do? If you want one, you got to pay the money.
Right.
You're not losing money on it, that's for sure. Look at that thing. That thing's sick. I love it. I love it. And I think you can lock up the diffs.
You
So
can.
if you had this in the snow with Blizzaks and you were a skilled, experienced driver, you could do extremely wild things that you probably wouldn't expect to do from a 90s wagon. That's where I'll leave that.
Let's see if this thing sounds like a cool
High performance wagons to me are always bonkers. I always have like a soft spot. Like they could have other flaws, but high performance wagons to me are just I love the wackiness, utility factor of them. I don't know if I can echo Jeff's like his passion right there, but I'm fully on board with this. Looking at some of the history of this car, as you guys mentioned, it's one of 2,900. The seller on this one actually owns two other ones.
Really?
So think how mental that is. He owns, I believe it was a Nagaro blue one and a yellow one.
Yeah,
man.
the yellow would just be out of this world.
I think looking at the history, this one was owned by a former CEO of Audi AG at some point. I believe looking at the comments. This is so cool. I mean, this to me, this is the second birth of Audi performance. The 80s, we had the Quattro, and then this was kind of the grandfather of what we have today with the S cars, the RS cars. This kind of kicked it back off again after the Quattro was out, rallying ended, and maybe we had some really nice, some nice Audis, not that high performance kind of really sport one. And to me, this is the 993 Club Sport, the 968 Club Sport of Audis. This is that rare, unique, that's always going to have a place with collectors and enthusiasts. Always going to have value. It's always going to have this aura of significance, which is what it should have, because it's the forebear of all these high performance Audis that we have today.
Yeah, well said, man. This thing really is awesome. And Jeff, you kind of got you definitely have the spirit of that in the one you have. You know what I mean? Obviously, it's not the $100,000 version, but it is pretty cool that driving yours, you're probably definitely going to get the vibe and feel of this thing, especially with that exhaust. A little bit of turbo noise coming out the back.
Yeah, I'm always sort of curious. I mean, obviously this is a much different car, but I feel like there's been a little bit of sleeping on all of the S4 S4 S6 cars that came into the States, kind of in the what you would call the C4, which is what my chassis is, and then I believe the B4 is what came in B4. like 98 to 2002. And actually a friend of mine, well, Lars, you know him, Adam, who was on this podcast a few weeks ago. He just bought a 2000 S4 for peanuts. And I'm kind of like wondering when things are going to wake up a bit on the high performance Audis, because they for a number of years, they were kind of just building things that nobody was asking for, but they were just building them anyway. And like, this is a perfect example. Like no one was sitting around saying, you know what we need? We need a high performance wagon that has Porsche DNA in it. Like no one was asking for that, and they built it anyway. And then that AAN engine, which is the turbocharged 5-cylinder, which is just, I mean, a real wonky motor. Like again, they didn't, like most companies, that they're building a high performance model, they would have gone to 8-cylinder, 6-cylinder turbo, whatever it was. And Audi kept building this turbocharged 5-cylinder, which I thought really is one of those kind of key ingredients, if you will, when you're talking about a car that has immense collectability. It's a little detail where they just stuck to their guns, and they didn't go with convention. They stuck with the thing that they always built as part of their lineage. So I do think that there's the market is very is negligent at the moment, and not appreciating the S line of Audis, kind of built up to about 2002. And hopefully that'll change in the coming years.
One other thing I love about this too is how understated it is. Like the three of us know this car, and we're like, wow. Someone else, someone that's not in the car, a spouse and a friend who won't get it. And if this car was made today, it would have huge fender flares and big exhaust. I think what makes these so cool is how understated it is. It's, we see it by, by the cup wheels and, and all that stuff. But like, that's one thing I think that's really kind of neat and key about these cars.
Well, that's a great point because even on, I think this is part of the same thing. Even on like on my S6, Audi chose to flare the front fenders, but not the rear, just because that was where they needed to do it.
Mm.
To and like the bumper again, like now this bumper obviously has the additional air inlets and the lenses that look like they came right off of a 993, but on it's the same thing on my car. The bumper is identical to the standard A6, except it has a little bit of a bump out to match the flare of the fenders. Like they were so subtle in the way they tweak these cars. And so, I mean, I'm right there with you that it's like that almost adds to the allure a little bit. And I'm willing to bet, I think those mirrors are unique
They
to
are,
these as
yep.
well. Okay, because they look like they came off of a 993.
They absolutely do. And same with those, what do you call them? Side reflectors. What I don't know what the name is. The side reflectors, I think.
Where are you looking, Lars?
Front bumper? Yeah, right on the front.
Yeah, that was unique. And then it had and the headlights were projector beam headlights, which the standard 90 Quattro didn't get. So I mean, it's a really nice upgrade, but things that were so most people wouldn't even notice. And that's one of the classic recipes for creating a collectible car, is to build one that only a few of us would know going down the road. It was something special. So this again, I don't think you're gonna ever see a price that you'd call bad on this one. I do find one of the comments interesting that someone called this a better car than DeMiro's car, which I mean, who knows what the reason is for that? It's insider baseball, but there's
his car had, I believe it was Nagaro blue, and it had less miles.
Yeah. Huh.
Maybe this one he's not referring to that, that history of the Audi Corp owning it. That might be tying into it,
Yeah.
I mean, his went for 103, which it's a $6,000 difference. So
for me, the blue is, I mean, you know what, man? I'm not going to curse, but screw it. If I'm getting this type of car, I mean, it is really understated though, so some people might prefer the silver, but that blue.
Yeah, I mean, if you say to me RS2 Avant, what color? I'm thinking Nagaro blue.
Yeah, see, that's where I'm at. Also, one thing I want to just throw in, really funny, when they released the new RS6 for the United States recently, it was 2021 model year, I think. Everyone's freaking out. Let's go! They finally gave it to us. Let's go! Remember when all these new cars, all the 911s, all the Corvettes, all the limited edition like Ford cars, everything, all supercars were going for tremendously over sticker, and they still are a little bit. I remember because I was in all those like wholesale retail groups. The only thing that I saw that was new coming out performance wise that was actually selling for sticker or below was that the Audi RS6 wagons. So it's almost like even today, it's like people still, they don't hit well.
Well,
this is a completely different story, obviously, but because this is, this is very loved by enthusiasts now, but I just thought that was interesting with the wagons. So, because we've always gotten skipped out on those, but they gave it to us after we begged and no one bought them.
Well, it's interesting, Lars, that particular car has become, I mean, it's a weird flex in some of the there's an Audi there's an S car preservation group on Facebook, and then there's also a manual wagon elitist group on Facebook. And
are you in that?
I'm in both of them. And
yeah, buddy.
But they both groups, like there's this weird thing a couple weeks, like how like these guys who bought the new RS6 like came into the group and they were talking about how much money they spent and all this stuff, and everyone just started clowning on them because they were just like, it's still not, I guess, I don't know what it is. I have to do more research on it, but I guess there's something about it that's still not quite. It's like with the E36 M3 when that came over, like Audi gave us kind of a lukewarm version of what the European market was, and it amounted to like they were just these guys were saying, oh, it's just a body kit, big wheels, big brakes, and maybe a little bit more power, something to that effect. But and it is automatic only. So I think there, and I don't know if that's the reason for what you noticed, which I agree with. They're not big sellers, um,
Not at all.
but I think there could be some disappointment in them. But I will say one other anecdote. The gentleman who clued me into the S6 that I have, he has a customer who is an entrepreneur, very successful, and he has one of those new RS6 wagons that he has serviced at his facility on occasion.
Hmm.
And he told me like the cost for a brake job on one of those is, I want to say it's north of $20,000. There's carbon ceramic, they're absolutely gigantic brakes. I mean, it's you know,
I
I
think they
could, I,
have some sort of technology like this, some sort of like variable ABS. I was watching a video. I don't know. I might be wrong about that, but continue.
but anyway, my point is just, I don't know if that car has a few strikes against it where, again, the diehard Audi enthusiast who is salivating over the prospect of a new high performance wagon, A, can't afford it, B, is
Yeah.
disappointed
Yeah.
by it. And so then it just goes to the people buy it who just have the means because it's just the most
Yeah.
expensive thing on the lot. So I'm not sure, but again, to your point though, if I'm in that income bracket and I'm looking for an Audi, a high performance Audi wagon, I'm buying this every day and twice on Sundays before I'm buying one of the new ones.
Are we gonna see that thing where, like, with what you're talking about, Jeff? Like, no one wants to buy these cars because the cost to repair them is so
Hey,
expensive.
I don't know why it hasn't happened yet because I really think it should. I think it's absolutely stupid how much these vehicles cost to maintain. And, I haven't, again, I would, if time were no object, I would love to go back and kind of do a price comparison to, like, if you were buying a 964 chassis 911 in 1994, how did the price to maintain it compare to a similar 911 today with, factoring in inflation and all that. I don't know. But I mean, the components were simpler. You were still talking about, simple disc brakes and maybe bigger calipers. I don't think it was quite nearly as exotic as they've seemingly made
Mm.
every supercar these days. And I guess that's the thing I don't get is, um, are there categories of people who just have so much money that they're like, I don't care, I'm gonna flex, I can, so I will. But are there also people who I do believe are out there who are just like, yeah, I have that money, but I don't really want to spend it like that. I'd rather buy,
Yeah.
um, a car that honestly is cheaper to maintain or at least more gratifying to maintain. Because
Mm.
if you give me the option between a brake job on a late model Audi versus a belt service on a mid 90s Ferrari that needs an engine out servicing every few years for the cost of 10 grand, I want the Ferrari you
Yeah.
know?
Totally.
So I don't know. John, I think about it a lot that I would
Yeah.
really like to see
It was.
people kind of rise up and say, this is stupid.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
talking about that?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah. You talking about that made me think. Last month, my dad had someone come in with a year-old F8 title in hand and wanted to trade in for a brand new Yukon AT4. And I was just like, how funny is that? Going from, like, title in hand F8, left like a year old, and wanting to gab it that bad and move over to something completely different.
And
Hmm.
look how cheap S8 sell for these days when they show up on a site like Cars and Bids. I mean, literally you can buy one with records for under 10 grand.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's something to that. And I wonder if we're just, I'd be very surprised if 50 years from now we see someone clamoring to buy a new RS, a modern day RS6 the same way they want to buy an RS2 from 1994. I think they're just different cars.
Mm.
So, well, gentlemen, this has been a treat as always. Thank you, John, for pulling together some awesome finds. I think overall for me, I I'm going to surprise everyone and say as much as I love the RS2 and it's one of my absolute dream cars for sure. In terms of this lineup tonight, I think if there's one I would call the smartest buy in the room, it's going to be the Pajero Evolution. I think that's just going to be a ton of fun for this new owner, and they didn't break the bank in doing so.
Yeah, I'll second that. I'm as much as I love that Audi, the price on that Pajero is in just the uniqueness of it is what makes it kind of the, I don't know, I guess the star of the day.
Yeah, I'm with you guys on that. That's a slamming price for the condition and the equipment you get with that vehicle. I think that was a pretty good buy on that guy's part for sure.
All right. Well, guys, we will see you back here next week. Lars, we're going to let you pick the theme next week. So we'll give you a head start to.
All right. Yeah, I'll find some cool stuff.
Yeah, we'll find something that lines, 3 line up, and
I like it.
We'll break it down. So this has been the commongear.com podcast. We're back here next week and every week discussing some of the hottest finds from the major digital auction platforms. Feel free to log in, check us out, and thank you for watching. Have a great night.